And some of these guys, they don't do the receiving tight end stuff. They're up the seam. It's out routes. It's wheel routes coming out of the backfield. It's things to the flat. What happened to throwing over the middle, quick little slant? You know you're getting popped. It doesn't matter. Here's a quick 7. That's what I want to see from my tight ends. Hike, 3-step drop, hitch, boom, straight in the breadbasket, getting blasted by the safety. He hangs on, tight end gets up, gives you a little bit of this. Welcome to the opening bell of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Connor Rogers. Another positional ranking episode for you guys. Today, we're talking about the tight end class. There's been a lot of talk about this tight end class for the 2025 NFL draft. Even going back to summer scouting, there were a lot of great names that we were getting to the table, really presenting to you guys of, hey, these players have really good years. It could shape up to be a pretty deep tight end room. And I think that that's true. I don't know if it's as star-studded at the top as we thought that it was going to be, but it is pretty deep. And I think there's a lot of sort of pick your flavor of tight ends, as there always are, that we're going to have to discuss here on the show as we give you our top 10s, early top 10s, I should say, because there's a lot more guys that we got to watch and get to. Connor, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good, brother. We've been joking that it's just starting to feel like we're back to caveman mode. We are sleeping a little, eating a little,
100%.
Working a lot, ready to grind through this group. And even I still have a lot of guys left to watch at tight end, full transparency. Like there's just so many day 3 guys that ran out of eligibility that are NFL players. That this is a oddly deep group, but like you kind of highlighted, it's not necessarily this group that's just loaded with top 50 picks. It's well beyond that. So this will be a group I'm watching all the way down to the actual draft week. But we have a really good baseline here. We watched this group over summer, so we're also building off that, despite a few guys going back to school, Oscar Delp being one. And yeah, man, this is gonna be another fun one.
Yeah, my man Oscar Delp. I don't know where he found more eligibility from, but going back to Georgia, getting another try. It wasn't his best year this year. I still believe. I don't, he wouldn't have been tight end too, like I think he was going into the year, but I still believe.
Well, I mean, going back to school as a Georgia tight end, you could do worse, man. He'll be fine.
Well, there's another Georgia tight end that we're going to talk about here on this show that I think was just unfortunately, a little bit of a down year statistically, was just how deep that Georgia tight end room was. And I wonder if Delp gets a little bit more of a look because the guy that we're going to talk about here is no longer there. So the tight end room's just a little less crowded. So you mentioned, I think that you encapsulated it perfectly. There's so many mid-round tight ends. There's so many day 3 options. There's so many tight end 2, tight end 3 types, guys you're building out your roster with, guys that are playing special teams for you. It is important to nail the tight end position when you talk about depth because it's guys that can do a lot of different things for you, not just in your offense, but on special teams as well. They really round out the roster. And I wonder how different our top 10s are going to look because you can prioritize a lot of different stuff. So specifically for me, I don't know if you do this in your scouting sheet, but I started doing this 2 years ago. I split them up. I have inline tight ends and I have move tight ends.
Smart.
And obviously, like, you have to do a little bit of both. Like even the receiving tight ends, it's normally you're not just a receiving tight end. You're going to have to do some blocking assignments and you might be a wing back behind the line of scrimmage. But I did that because I wanted to change the weighting system of how I had like certain traits to where movement and receiving traits were worth more for guys that are going to be much more receivers. And then obviously the bigger guys that are going to play in line more. Okay, well, now the bigger piece of that pie for their total film grades are blocking. And so we're prioritizing that a little bit more. And ultimately we get a final film grade and I've got my top 10 overall, but you want to find out and you want to allow these guys to have their strengths shine more. So that's sort of how I break those up. And I'll try to continue to reiterate that as PFF does their mock draft simulator stuff. And as we do team-centric big boards specifically over the next couple of months, which we're going to get into over at PFF, that distinction I think is going to be important. But
it really is. Yeah.
Go ahead.
One guy that I don't have ranked today for this because every time I watch him, I'm like, man, he really just is more of a wide receiver to me. And I'm kind of fascinated to see him go through the process, what he weighs in at and all of that. Is Oronde Gadsden from Syracuse. I didn't rank him today, full transparency. Insanely productive, But every time I watch him, he just looks like a power slot wide receiver to me, where when we do final wide receiver rankings or final tight end rankings, I'll kind of land on a spot for him there.
I agree.
Right?
I agree with you 100%. I watched him for this exercise, and just like I sort of thought when we were going over this during the summer, I watched him again for this, and I went, I am not putting you in this group. And if I am, I'm putting you last of the guys that I watched. I watched 15 tight ends so far. He would be ranked 15th amongst tight ends because he does not play the position the way
you have to be a tight end.
Right.
Sure, I mean,
in order to be a tight end, you actually...
It's cool that he got the records, but it's a little bit of a loophole.
The whole thing's a publicity stunt, man. The whole thing's a publicity stunt because he's a wide receiver recruit. He started at wide receiver at Syracuse, and they moved him to tight end mysteriously, and now he leads the nation for receiving yards and receptions and receiving touchdowns for a tight end. I'm not knocking him. The guy's got skill, but you're a wide receiver, so it's a little bit different. We can get into this when we talk about him in future episodes. He's also not my cup of tea wide receiver. I know some people really gravitate towards the guys that win with the length and the height and all of that as like a big slot type of receiver. That's not my cup of tea. So I'm not going to value him super high, but we'll see that when we get into final big board episodes, because I know a lot of people like him. All right. So top 10s. Let's go 10 to 5.
Okay.
Or 10 through 6, as we always do. And then we will sort of get a little bit more individual with the top 5s there. So who you got 10 to 6? Rattle them off.
10 for me is me truly not letting go. It's Luke Lachey from Iowa.
Okay. All right.
Okay. It's really me holding on to pre-injury Luke Lachey. Yeah. And I was really torn at the spot between, now I watched 12 guys for this. So it wouldn't be shocking if there's somebody I watch, because the Shrine and Senior Bowl rosters are really deep at this position, and that steals this spot in the end. Gavin Bartholomew, who I had at 11, but I was kind of flipping him in Lachey a couple times. He's from Pitt. 9 for me is Jake Briningstool from Clemson. 8 for me was Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame. 7 for me was Terrance Ferguson from Oregon, who I've just think he's solid since summer.
You're T for a guy.
T-Ferg's just solid. He's never spectacular, never bad. Right. He's just solid. And then 6 for me is someone who I really like, a 1-year breakout out of nowhere, but a monster breakout, is Gunnar Helm from Texas, who I think had a really, really good year. There's some things he's still working on as he got his real shot this year. But he was number 6 for me. And I think I had a surprise in my top 5 that I'll get to later.
I'm doing the numbers in my head, and I'm like, okay, I see all the names that you've listed, and then they're either just outside of my top 10 or in that same range that you have. And I'm like, who do you have?
Yeah, there's someone in my top 5 that I had never watched besides broadcast games before this exercise.
It's called a teaser, folks.
Yep. So you got to buckle up. You got to stay through another ad, suckers. No.
Yeah, the average watch time better be through the roof on this episode.
As you wait for the sleeper tight end that your team has to draft.
The sleeper that you've never heard of is Tyler Warren.
Yeah. Colston Loveland. So the guy that you've never heard of.
So just some quick thoughts on Luke Lachey. So he was outside of my top 15. I have him at number 14 out of the 15 guys that I watched. And then Briningstool, I had at number 11. So those are the 2 guys that were on your list who just missed my top 10.
Did you watch Bartholomew?
I did not get to him yet. And so he is somebody that I will have to get to a little bit later. Luke Lachey, you mentioned, from Iowa, redshirt senior. Actually, he's number 10 on your list. You go ahead and intro him. He's your boy.
Yeah, I mean, this is somebody who I really liked. I thought 2 years ago he was kind of the next big Iowa tight end, as did everyone. He's he's about 6'5", 250, maybe even a little taller than 6'5". He's so he's got the size. He had right ankle surgery in 2023.
Yeah.
And I just don't think he's been the same guy since then. Personally, is kind of what it seems like with him when you just look at, he had 28 catches for 231 yards this year. I know this is not a drop back, throw it around the yard kind of offense. The 2023 injured season, he only had 10 catches, but it looked like when you watch 2022, where he was still sharing the field with Sam Laporta, keep in mind, he had 28 catches for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. And it was like, okay, when they actually keep him involved, he looks like a guy, and he's got the size. I thought he was somebody that he just knew how to use his frame. He had length. He had athleticism. I thought that on third down, he could be a go-to weapon to move the chains. The blocking was still underdeveloped. And then that ankle surgery has just set him back, where he just hasn't gotten his footing fully under him. So I like Lachey. I want to see him go. I liked Lachey. It's just been a steady decline for him. Like, he was tight end 3 for me coming into the year, because I projected a full bounce back and more. Kind of the season that Gunnar Helm had is what I thought Luke Lachey was going to have, and he didn't. And it's been trending the wrong way for him, but he does have a shrine invite. He'll go through the combine, and it's a really good chance for him to maybe now be a day 3 value pick in this draft for a guy that I thought once upon a time looked like he was going to be a top 100 selection.
Yeah, you kind of have to believe in what you saw 2 years ago, pre-ankle surgery.
That's hard to do.
And you have to think that he will get back to that form, because unfortunately right now, I agree with you. I don't think he's an NFL athlete right now, and I don't think he's been an NFL athlete since he came back after that ankle surgery. And maybe it's something that just takes a little bit of time for him to get a little bit stronger, get more confidence in that leg, and just work on his quickness, work on his speed to get to that level again. But so normally I do a 2-year sample size when I'm looking at percentiles, when we're talking about things here on the show. For him, I did the 3-year sample size. I threw in 2022 as well. But even if you throw in 2022, just a 40% separation percentile against single coverage, that's only 6th percentile. Sorry, it's 40% overall against single coverage. That's just 6th percentile overall, which is not a strong number. I mean, you mentioned his blocking. I don't mind the fundamentals with his blocking, but he's not really a stout run blocker. Just a 27% positively graded run blocking plays or impact run blocking plays. So that's not really his game. His game is mainly going to be as a receiver. I think that he can go. I think he can be scrappy for you on the line of scrimmage, just because Iowa teaches all of their tight ends to be. And I think that he's got some good fundamentals there, but I don't believe he had that strength level. I don't think that as of right now in his current form, he's got that strength level to win as an inline blocker. So he really just has to win as a receiver. And unfortunately, he doesn't right now. He's got good hands, but the 2022 tape looks different than the 2024 tape. And the 2024 tape to me is like a late day 3 type of a tight end that you're maybe hoping can get back to that level. Funny story about him though, just for everybody out there. So he grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and his dad is Jim Lachey, who was the former number 12 overall pick of the 1985 NFL draft. He was an offensive tackle, got drafted by the Los Angeles Chargers. He's a 3-time All-Pro, won a Super Bowl, played in the NFL for over 10 seasons. So his dad was a Buckeye. His dad went to Ohio State. His mom went to Ohio State. His grandparents went to Ohio State. His uncles went to Ohio State. His sisters went to Ohio State. His cousins went to Ohio State. Luke grew up a diehard Ohio State fan, and the offer never came. Ohio State only ever gave him a gray shirt offer, and Iowa gave him a full ride. So we ended up going to Iowa. And there's a story out there. I can't remember who wrote it, but it's a fun little story because Jim, his dad, is a radio broadcaster for Ohio State. And when Iowa played in the Horseshoe this year and he was healthy enough to play against him, it was just kind of a cool moment for the family. So guy who's from Columbus, Ohio, was sort of a Buckeye through and through growing up, ends up going over to Iowa. And he actually, he had his highest grade of the season. I don't know if you saw this. His highest overall grade of the season against Ohio State.
Think he was ready for that game?
I love it, man. Those games that always carry a little bit of extra emotion, those are the ones I like to watch.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah.
First game of the year, sometimes you could watch that and see how a guy is right out of the gate. Rivalry games. If you transferred from somewhere and you play that team, I want to see how you're playing against them. And then obviously postseason stuff, anytime you're playing for some hardware, college football playoff spot, conference championship, whatever. But anyways, just getting back to it. Luke is somebody who I know you were a big fan of. Unfortunately, if he's going to win as a receiver, he's got to be able to get quicker. He's got to get closer to that 2022 form.
I'm with you all the way. Another guy that I didn't get to finish watching, so I didn't rank him, but I thought could have been a contender for this spot where I got done watching him, as my brain completely freezes, was Georgia Tech's Gavin Hawes. Not Gavin Hawes.
Jackson.
Right?
Yes.
Why is my brain? I'm having like an absolute.
Yes, Jackson Hawes.
Jackson Hawes, not Gavin Hawes. But and all blocking. Like I'm watching him and it's just
Correct.
like all blocking. But I'm like, man, like you have a floor that teams will really, really like. So I had him in consideration, but I just didn't get to finish enough games. But man, like talk about like a road dog blocker that I think also deserves to be brought up. And I know you watched more of him, so I'm sure we'll talk about him.
Yes. So he was outside of my top 10. So I just touch on him briefly. And just to list off who I had from 15 to 11, I had Oronde Gasson at 15. I had Luke Lachey at 14. Jalen Connors from Texas Tech, the giant tight end who started his career at Oklahoma. Then he moved on to Arizona State for 3 years. And then he played at Texas Tech. I have him at number 13. Big dude, 6'6", 260 pounds. I think he could be a good receiver for you. He gives you some good flash plays, but for a bigger guy, I think he's going to be more of an inline tight end at the NFL level. I need to see more violence in the blocks, and I just did not see that from him. He was too much of a splash player for me, so I have him a little bit lower at number 13. Hawes, I have at number 12, who extremely limited as a wide receiver. I mean, he didn't have 200 yards receiving total in any season of the 4 seasons that he played of college football, but he'll block his ass off, and he's got the strength for it. He's got the mentality for it. He is absolutely, like you said, a high floor blocking type
big
of
body
player who,
like a real 260.
Easy tight end 3 for 5, 6, 7 years in the NFL, in my opinion.
I'm with you. I think we saw him exactly the same.
And then Briningstool was the other player that I had just outside at number 11. So that kind of goes into him being number 9 for you. I know that Briningstool's got some fans within the draft circle, about 6'6", 230 pounds. So he's just this long, lean, receiving type of tight end. Just doing some background information on him. I saw this quote from Dabo Sweeney. He said, quote, he was a little bit immature early on as far as what it was going to take for him to be the best version of himself. But man, he has bought into it. He's a tough kid. He's a tough competitor. He's a great finisher on the ball. I would agree with that completely. When you look at how he played early on in his career, I didn't think that he was to his fundamentals at all whatsoever. He was all just like, okay, he's a pretty good athlete. He's got that size and length to him. You love that about him, but he did not have that mentality. He did not play with that strength. And look, he's 230, so he's going to be more of a receiving tight end than anything. But I at least love the fact that this year he played with an edge to him.
I agree.
He played pissed off this year. So even though he was running into defensive linemen and outside linebackers that were clearly going to give him the business, he was doing it, and he was doing what he needed to do there. Now, like I said, the long strides, the athleticism, he's going to be a move tight end. He's going to be that big slot type of a player. He's going to be a mismatch type of guy in the receiving game, which I think that he did fairly well, although I felt as though he lacked creativity after the catch. He lacked nuance in his routes, so that still has to come along for him to be a big difference maker in that regard. But I do like where we're going with Briningstool. I at least like the attitude that I saw this year, which makes him intriguing for a day 3 player.
I'm not going to lie. When I turned on the tape and wrote down his measurables, just typically not my type of player at all. A guy that is that lanky and used. So he had 360 snaps in the slot and 33 out wide. So you're talking about almost 400 snaps really playing wide receiver or slot receiver compared to 291 in line. And then I really gave the tape a chance. And there was flashes as a blocker where I was like, man, if you actually gain weight and you fall into the right coaching situation, you have a chance. Right. And I got to be honest, when I went in, I was like, no way. Like he's going to get thrown around. And this year it felt like, you're right, Trevor, some kind of light came on where he had some reps out there where you're like, he's got a little dog in him as a blocker, even if he doesn't have the mass that he needs to hang in there. He's caught 12 touchdowns over the last 2 years. So you know what he is as a receiver in the red zone, which is a good sign. So I have him at 9. The Senior Bowl invite's big for him. I think he would be what I would classify as a project tight end at the NFL level, though.
Totally. And I gave him. So I gave him a 5th round grade on film, which is it's like a developmental tab. Like I have like a round grade, and then it's sort of like, okay, what this projection normally means when you're picked in this round. And it's literally developmental prospect. That's what it is. Because I think that he's going in the right direction, but he needs to continue to go into that direction. The red zone threat you mentioned, he's got pretty high catch percentages, which is good to see. The issue is sort of what I was saying a little bit earlier. If you're just going to be a receiving tight end, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But 33rd percentile in separation versus single coverage, it's got to be better than that. You got to be a better route runner. You got to have more nuance there. And then just 23rd in yards after catch percentile. He just wasn't dynamic after he got the ball in his hands. So those are 2 areas where I'd love to see him get more creative, get more dynamic, because I think there can be a little something there. In his current state, the player comp that I have for him is Colin Johnson from Texas.
Yeah,
you remember Colin Johnson was just this
massive wide receiver,
6'6", 225-pound guy, and he's still floating around. I think he's still with the Chicago Bears, and there was talk of him transitioning and becoming a tight end. So I think that the talk can go the other way around. So that's my early working comp for Briningstool. But just like we talked about with Lachey, funny thing about Briningstool. So his father Tony played linebacker at Michigan State. Both of his grandparents went to Michigan State. His sister went to Michigan State. His cousin worked on Tom Izzo's staff on the men's basketball team. And he chose to go to Clemson.
I say he chose Clemson. He was a big recruit.
Yes, because Michigan State, he went to camps like Michigan State, like football camps growing up. They were the first school to offer him. And he was like, nah, I'm going to Clemson.
Yeah, he was not about that life. He was
not about that life.
Yeah, he was a big recruit. He was. Yes. So I had him at 9. I'm curious. Once again, I'm really curious to see how the back end of these rankings develop with so many guys getting all-star invites at this group. And after him, I thought there was a gap though. That Lachey Briningstool at 10 and 9 for me. I thought there was a gap to 8 and 7 with Mitchell Evans and Terrance Ferguson.
Yeah,
I thought they were much more like pro style tight ends to me.
Okay, maybe I know the guy who's sneaky in your top 5.
You're playing Clue?
Well, I'm just process of elimination here. So
yeah.
I feel like it's a good time to.
If it helps, he is 5. 10th. Like I don't have a surprise at 2 or 1.
All right, 10 through 6 for me. Number 10 is Caden Prieskorn from Ole Miss.
It's not him.
Okay, all right.
I watched him. I watched a lot of him over summer. This player I had never watched for this show.
Okay. Number 9, I have Mason Taylor from LSU.
Sure.
Number 8, I have your boy Fergalicious. I got Terrance Ferguson at 8. Number 7, I got Mitchell Evans.
Right.
And then at number 6, I have Elijah Arroyo from Miami.
He's 5.
There it is.
Yep.
We got to it.
Yep.
We got to it.
What a fun surprise, huh?
We're only 22 minutes into the podcast, so now the average view
class dismissed
duration.
Class dismissed. Go watch Elijah Arroyo.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that'd be great. So, all right, you watched a little bit of Prieskorn, though, who I have at number 10. I did not love Caden Prieskorn when we watched him over summer scouting. I was like, okay, kind of an afterthought dude, maybe a day 3 flyer. So he's 6'5", 255 pounds. And I'm not going to lie, man, I enjoyed the tape that I saw from him this year. Now, he's an all-around tight end type of a player. He's going to be able to play in line for you. The separation percentile, 7th percentile. So, if he's going to catch the ball, it's going to have to be in contested catch situations. Right. However, he's great at them. And some of these guys, even for being listed as tight ends, like even as receiving tight ends, they don't do the receiving tight end stuff. Like you think about it. There's a lot of tight ends that are a little bit lighter for the position that you would say, okay, they're more of these move tight ends. They're big slot players. But then a lot of their routes are out and ups. They're up the seam. It's out routes. It's wheel routes coming out of the backfield. It's things to the flat. It's things to the outside. What happened to throwing over the middle, quick little slant? You know you're getting popped. It doesn't matter. Here's a quick 7. That's what I want to see from my tight ends when they're lined up on the outside, or when they're lined up in the slot, I should say. Hike, 3-step drop, hitch, boom, straight in the breadbasket, getting blasted by the safety. He hangs on. Tight end gets up, gives you a little bit of this, which is apparently a penalty in the NFL now.
Yeah, you're not allowed to do anything.
But that is something that I saw from Caden Prieskorn and a couple of other guys that we're going to talk about here. Mitchell Evans is another one of them. In breaking routes, man. Stuff over the middle. Backside digs. Just those even mesh concept stuff where you're going over the middle and you know when you're about to get hit, but really it's the quick slant stuff. It's the stuff that's over the middle. The seam route stuff where you know you're probably going to get hit by a safety. Even some of these receiving tight ends that we have in this class didn't do the dirty work reception stuff very often, or they weren't asked to do it very often. Prieskorn was at least one of those guys that I go, okay, is he the fastest? Is he the strongest? Does he separate super well? No. But he's pretty all around. He gives you a decently high floor. And for a tight end 3 of a traditional tight end role, this guy I think can fill it at the NFL level. So I didn't want to shout him out because
I like it.
I didn't think that he was much of a prospect coming into this year. And I actually liked his tape more than I thought that I was going to. So I got him at 10. Mason Taylor's at 9. Terrance Ferguson's at 8. You want to talk about T. Ferg real quick? We'll break him down a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I got him at 8. Where'd you have him? 7?
7. Let me just check. Yeah, I had him at 7.
Okay.
I mean, really the same exact guy from summer, right? 6'5", 255. He went back to school, and obviously to a really good Oregon team, the stats aren't wildly different. 2023, 42 catches, 414 yards, 6 touchdowns. 2024, 43 catches, more yards, 591, less touchdowns, 3. With Ferguson, he's got good size, and I think he knows how to use it to box out or climb the ladder or kind of work in space. Mm-hmm. I thought he climbed the ladder for big plays more in 2023. And 2024, I thought he was better at finding space, which isn't shocking with the player getting more experience. There's some really big time catches, as I've said, on the 2023 tape. 2024, what I liked, I thought he improved a lot as a blocker on the line of scrimmage. I saw a lot of leg drive. It seems like he's gotten a lot stronger in his base, and he just understood when engaged how to drive his legs to help move people rather than just kind of land and lock. I thought that the effort blocking down the field is a plus. When he gets his sights on a DB, it's like, oh, now you're in my domain. And it was like when it was against a front 7 player, it was like, okay, let me think about technique. When it was against a DB, it was like, let me snowplow you out of the way. He's not explosive. He's not very fast. And this year, what I didn't see in 2023 that I saw more of this year, I saw him alligator arm a lot of passes where I was I agree. Which was weird. What I liked about him over summer was like he's really reliable. This year, there was a lot of times where Gabriel would throw a pass away from his frame and he'd alligator arm it rather than smoothly adjusting or kind of turning in his body, like having a more springy body. He was very tight, and I can't adjust to this, and my elbows are against my frame. So that was one area where I was like, I thought progressed as a blocker. I thought he regressed as a pass catcher a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what you're saying there. One of the lines that I have for him is I like him as a receiver. When you look at some of his percentiles and just how natural of an athlete he is, and he's got good size to him. He's listed at 6'5", 255 pounds, and he carries it super well. He carries it like an athlete. He really does. He's somebody who grew up playing 4 different sports: football, basketball, track and field, lacrosse. So he's got that versatile background to him. 53rd percentile in separation when he's in single coverage situations. That's not bad. 92nd percentile when it comes to yards after catch. And so some of that is schemed up a little bit where you're just getting a guy running in a straight line, but other times he's able to show that he's pretty dynamic. So I like him as a receiving tight end, but an issue that I have with him this year is he didn't attack the ball in the air the way that I wanted him to. And honestly, in the same way that he attacked it, I thought in 2023. So I saw this similarly to you. So it feels as though when we went into the season, it was like, okay, where can he take steps, to really improve his game and improve his stock? Because I thought, him being a back end, a day two type of a guy was well within reach for Terrance Ferguson. Now I think, all right, you're probably a priority day three type of a player because you're not bringing me a ton when it comes to run blocking. I think the technique is fine, but I think he lacks the real, in my opinion, leg drive to be a difference maker against the run. You talked about how it was a little bit of a struggle for him when he was going up against those box defenders, specifically against defensive ends or outside linebackers trying to set the edge. But as a receiver, he does a lot of things that you like. He's got to be stronger at the catch point, in my opinion. To play this position and to be that receiving tight end, you've got to be stronger at the catch point. He reminded me in my early comp for him is Foster Moreau, who is more of that longer sort of athletic receiving tight end. And he's somebody who can give you some yards after the catch if you as well. It's not a ton of wiggle, but it's pretty good. Put your foot in the ground and get upfield type of a yards after catch, which I feel like Ferguson does pretty well. So Moreau's found a nice spot with New Orleans, sort of as that receiving tight end within that system. And I think Terrance Ferguson has the ability to be sort of that tight end 2 receiving tight end in the NFL. So it didn't blow me away. A little bit of what you see is what you get. I think he's probably a priority day 3 type of a guy. But that's what I thought of Terrance Ferguson.
Where did you have Mitchell Evans?
7. So
all right, okay, so I think we had them flipped. I had Evans at 8. So why don't you talk about Evans a little bit? I'll piggyback off that, and then we'll get into Arroyo.
Yeah, so Baby Gronk, right? But, Baby Gronk before him was Michael Mayer, and then Baby Gronk before him was Cole Kmet, and then no, I'm just kidding.
And then there was actual Baby Gronk.
No,
we're not going down that road today.
No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that.
I'm out.
So Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame had a lot of hype, honestly, when he got to Notre Dame. Yeah, he was behind Michael Mayer for 2 years, but they were really excited about this guy when he was going to become a full-time starter, and he has over the last 2 seasons. 6'5", 260 pounds, and I think he's all of 260. I think some of these other guys, maybe Mason Taylor, maybe Terrance Ferguson, I think a couple of them, maybe they'll be closer a little bit, 250 when they lined up at the combine. But Mitchell Evans, I think, is going to be 260, maybe 262, something like that. I think that this is somebody who can line up on the line of scrimmage and play pretty strong. And ultimately, that's why I have him over a Mason Taylor, a Terrance Ferguson, a Caden Prieskorn, guys like that, is because I've got more faith in what Evans can do as a blocker, the physical profile that he has, but also those tough contested catches. He had some monster contested catches in 2023, not as many, I don't believe, in 2024, but those opportunities to run those in-breaking routes, run them with confidence, and be somebody that can attack over the middle of the field, whether it's short, intermediate, or deep. That's the type of tight end that I want on my team. I want a tight end that gives me the ability to unlock the middle of the field, and I still think that Mitchell Evans allows you to do that. Now, he's not the best athlete in the world. Separation percentile is just 29th percent against single coverage separations, and yards after the catch just 35th percentile. So he's not really going to bring that to his game. I think he's a little bit stiff when it comes to his movements, but not overly twitchy of a player, I guess I should say. But man, he's just a strong football player. I think he's dense in his body mass, really strong hands, like I mentioned. And I think he's got a decent first step. Straight line speed is still fine for me. And even I'm going to take a few steps off the line of scrimmage, I'm going to put my foot in the ground, and I'm going to explode one way, whether it's in breaking or an out breaking route. That's the kind of stuff that I do still think he can do. Can you set him up? Or can he set you up and give you all sorts of wiggle or double breaks, or is he running whip routes or things like that? No. But for a traditional tight end sense, I think he brings a lot to the table. Tore his ACL and MCL in 2023, so he missed most of last season, came back this year, and I think he was really just sort of getting back to form. I do believe that we could see an even better version of him once he gets into the NFL, so excited about that. I had a little bit of a quarterback background as I'm reading sort of his background right now in high school. played quarterback as a senior, played tight end as a junior, also played basketball. Got a pretty diverse family background when it comes to athleticism. His dad, Adam, played football at Penn and Kent State. His mother played volleyball at Akron. His sister plays volleyball at Georgia. So just a really athletic family. Ultimately, the bottom line that I have for Mitchell Evans here, Evans doesn't have the rare movement skills that set him apart as a potential top 60 pick as a future NFL tight end, but his floor is balanced and high as a tight end 3 with the potential to move into a contributing tight end 2 role due to how reliable his blocking and hands are through contact. So that's sort of what I thought of Mitchell Evans there. What'd you think?
I thought pretty much the same. One thing I'll keep in mind here, while I didn't think the movement skills pre-injury were anything out of this world, he is coming off the torn ACL in 2023 and might be a little bit more explosive the further removed he is from that. And coming off that torn ACL in 2023, still finishes with over 40 catches, over 400 yards, 3 drops on 59 targets. You brought up the family background. It's insane that, mom played volleyball in college, dad played football in college. You go even further back to the 2023 tape. He had a standout game against Ohio State in 2023, 75 yards on 7 catches. He showed off his blocking. I think you highlighted this a lot. Like he has the necessary mass on the line of scrimmage that just not a lot of these guys carry. And that's an NFL tight end. When you carry that kind of mass and can contribute in the pass game, it goes back to actually an interesting way how we talked about Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech, who is all blocking, because of his frame and his kind of demeanor. You just look at Mitchell Evans and say, man, like he's got the blocking ability, and we think that the receiving game can continue to at least contribute, not be the tight end 1 kind of guy, but like you said, Trevor, develop into a tight end 2.
Where'd you have Mason Taylor ranked from LSU?
4th.
Okay, I have him 9th.
Okay, so you're a little lower on Mason Taylor.
I wonder if I'm going to be one of the lower people on Mason Taylor here, who I felt like I was disappointed with when I watched his tape.
It's funny because that was me over the summer. When people were talking about Mason Taylor over the summer, I didn't even have him in my top 8 we did or whatever we did, top 7 to 10. I was like, man, I don't see it as much. And then when I went back and watched this year, I see him on the right trajectory. He's somebody that has great hands. I think he has enough burst off the line of scrimmage into his routes. I saw him work through contact at the catch point, enough straight line speed to run the seam. He's really good at understanding leverage to get under pads. He could give you an edge in the run game. Especially the downhill running game is where I thought he looked better rather than the zone running game. But I still think he needs to get bigger. I still want to see him make plays. I liked him playing through contact at the catch point. I did not like him playing high pointing the ball. There was so many different times where he had a chance to high point the ball and climb the ladder, and he didn't come down. He didn't finish the play consistently. And there's just no creativity after the catch with him. Like it's just kind of catch the ball, run straight, where there was a couple other guys where I saw like Gunnar Helm, who I had at 6, who I don't think is the same blocker at the next level potentially as Mason Taylor. I loved Helm after the catch in comparison. 100%. So that was a big drawback. But I think Mason Taylor is getting bigger, stronger, and showing really reliable hands. And I mean, I wouldn't take him. I wouldn't even take him in the second round. There's just a big drop off from my top 2 guys. And after that, but in the 3rd round, I think he's going to go and truly be that tight end 2 that can give you a little of everything.
Yeah, I mean, genuinely, Mitchell Evans, Terrance Ferguson, Mason Taylor, Caden Prieskorn, they're all in the same bucket. Like they're all in the same tier. They're basically early day 3 guys, in my opinion. I think Mason Taylor needs to get stronger, and he certainly could, and he's going to get the opportunity to do that. He's listed as 6'5", 255 pounds. I think he needs to get stronger one way or
I don't think he's 255.
I don't think he's 255 either. So whether he's 255 and he needs to get to 260, 265, or if he's like 245, 250 and he needs to gain another 10 pounds that way, I think that needs to happen, because I agree. I think he needs to be stronger in contested catch situations. I was not as encouraged with him as a blocker. I also felt as though, even though he has a lot of experience in line, like I felt as though the hands were super wide all the time consistently. Like the hands need to be much better, much more in control. And sometimes that just is what it is, right? If you're a tight end, you're kind of lining guys up. And if they hit you early, you go, okay, well, now I got to sort of get my hands on you. And sometimes you can be a little bit wide with the hands, but I felt like he was consistently wide with the hands. Now, look, he's Jason Taylor's son. So he's going to get all the chances in the world to play at the NFL level just because of the Hall of Fame bloodlines that's there. Zach Thomas is his uncle. It's just, he's basically a Miami Dolphin is what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to tell you. He was state champion at St. Thomas Aquinas, a legendary high school, when he was in high school there. So it's like he's an accomplished high school player, went to a big school in LSU, has the NFL bloodlines to him. If you are correct and you think that his best football is ahead of him, I think he will get that chance to be that type of a player. I just think he's a little bit further away than you are. It's hard for me to go, yeah, all right. I think that you're definitely going to get stronger and become a better blocker and get more dynamic after the catch and get better at contested catch situations and have a little bit more nuance in your routes. And it's just like a lot of things that I go, you might get better at one or two of those things.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know how much better you're going to get better at all of them. And so, hey, maybe he blossoms into just a completely different player. That could be the case. But in his current state, there are some that's the bucket that I have him in with those other four guys. And I've seen him ranked a little bit higher, but I kind of got to stop at being a mid-round player, maybe a third-round pick if you, again, believe in the potential, or a priority day 3 guy in the 4th round. That's sort of where I saw Mason Taylor here within this class. Okay, so Elijah Arroyo? Yes, so you had him at 5. At 5, and I had him at 6.
Yes.
So we basically have him in the same spot. Talk to me about him. Let's go. He's a Senior Bowl guy, so we'll get to see him next week.
This fella can run for a 6'4", I'll say 245-ish pounds. We'll see what he decides, what he ends up weighing in at. Redshirt junior at Miami, ACL tear in 2022. So this he only plays the 4 games in 2022. 2023 was also held back by injury. So he only has 11 career catches across 3 seasons before 2024. He was a pretty big time recruit, so he has a good pedigree. And then 2024, healthy, Cam Ward at quarterback, 35 catches, 590 yards, 7 touchdowns. Breakout season. Number 1 out of the gate. Only 1 drop on 47 targets this year. Yeah. He catches everything. And when I say catches everything, they're not just running the same old swing pass to him over and over again. This guy works vertical at times too, keep in mind. Like, he could really get down the field. There are targets that are catch and run designed plays, but he also gets some chances down the field. His average depth of target was over 10. It was 11 yards. Which is wild at times. 79th percentile. That's a good call out. And yet he had a 94th percentile yards after catch too, just to give you guys a hint of how good the receiving profile is for this. It's really good, the receiving profile. He's quick. He's agile. His routes, I saw separation with his routes. He can kind of sink his hips. He could change direction. The change of direction in his routes is really as smooth as you'll see for a real tight end, like somebody weighing 240 plus pounds. Here's the thing, Trevor. I know he's not the biggest guy and he hasn't gotten a lot of experience because of the injury. He does play with an edge as a blocker. 100%. It's like, it's there. It's physically, there's times where, hey, he's 240 up against 280. It is what it is. But in terms of demeanor, effort, like really bringing it and trying, it's there. And that's what matters with a guy like this. So the couple things that I would keep an eye on, like, that's just not a prototypical inline body where I'm going to have it. If you're drafting Elijah Arroyo and you're like, hey, 80% of your snaps, you're playing on the line of scrimmage and blocking a defensive end,
he's playing, then you're an idiot. Then you're an idiot. Like, I think you could do things with him in the backfield. They like to work him across the formation and dump it down to him.
I think at times you could run him up the seam. Maybe you have 2 tight ends on one side and have him run the seam and have the other one block or work underneath. But you're right. He could also be that power slot for you. But and it's kind of funny. He only had 1 contested catch on only 5 opportunities. But when you watch this offense, so much is Cam Ward extending a play and Arroyo gets open somewhere else. So there's not a ton of times where somebody's climbing all over him. He's also such a good separator that plays into it as well. So I really like the speed. I really like the athleticism, and I really like the mindset where this guy can maybe be not a weapon as this inline blocker all the time, but there's a weapon as a blocker in there in creative ways that I almost had him at 4 over Mason Taylor. The upside with this guy is what I would really want to swing on.
Yeah, I could absolutely see it. I could absolutely see him being tight end 4, maybe even tight end 3.
I think 3. I think 3 is in play.
Yeah, I can't wait to see him at the Senior Bowl because I agree. There's a lot of things that I really liked about him. I watched 5 plays before I immediately wrote down, okay, this dude plays with an edge.
Yep.
Like it was 5 straight plays, and I go, all right. Sense of urgency, effort, game speed, just that playing with a chip on your shoulder. He's got it. And the blocking technique is not only not good, it's sometimes reckless. Like when he is going up against a defensive end that outweighs him by more than 40 pounds, he will completely dip his head and try to just get, And it's like, all right, that's not good. We don't need to get hurt here. We don't need you exposing the crown of the helmet.
Yeah.
I also saw when he would keep his eyes up and when he would get his hands up in run blocking, he'd actually get latched on and have really good hand positioning. I would notice that, like, as he would start his leg drive, he's doing so with no leverage at all whatsoever. Like his shoulders are up here and the other guys are like down here. And it's like, all right, well, you're probably not going to be able to push anybody that far. And so there are some things with blocking technique that need to be worked out. And he's obviously just not the strongest tight end in the world, given exactly what he does. But I can see difference-making plays and difference-making traits. And I can't say that for even most of the guys in this class. We just talked about Mitchell Evans, Terrance Ferguson, Mason Taylor, Caden Prieskorn, guys like that. A lot of it is just, pick whoever you want.
Right.
Just pick one of them. Doesn't really matter. They're kind of the same, a lot of the same things. Arroyo, if you have a plan for this dude, who's my early working comp for him? Oh, so I have Grant Calcaterra on here for what Calcaterra has been as a wide receiver for Philly. But I think that he can be better than that. Like, certainly, I think he could give you even more of an output than what Calcaterra has. But Calcaterra started going through it with injuries throughout his college and NFL career. So I think that goes into it as well. But a fun story and background for Elijah Arroyo as well. He was born in Miami, grew up in Miami. His parents moved to Cancun, Mexico when he was 6 years old. So he spent 6 years there. So he actually really learned the game of football playing for a youth football team in Cancun, Mexico.
Pretty wild.
Then they moved to Frisco, Texas, back to the United States. And then he played at Independence High School there when he was in Texas before committing to Miami, sort of coming back home, a little bit of a full circle thing. But I like this player a lot. I have him at number 6, but genuinely, I feel like there is a path for him to be tight end 3 in this class because he was a lot of fun to watch, and you know what you're getting as a wide receiver from him. I mentioned some of those numbers already. A 79th percentile average depth of target, and yet a 94th percentile yards after catch for the tight end position. That's normally it is very much one or the other. You were either high A dot, low yards after catch, or you are very low A dot, very high yards after the catch. That's just how it works. When you are high in both, you pay attention to those things. So very excited to see him in Mobile and see how he works out with a bunch of these other guys. Before we get to our next player, have you guys played Pick 6 yet by DraftKings? Because if not, you're running out of time. We got 2 more games before the Super Bowl. We got the conference championship games. As the official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL, DraftKings does fantasy sports like no one else. You can play for better payouts on Pick 6. Very easy to get started. You select 2 or more players. Just choose if they will have more or less of a single stat, like touchdowns, receiving yards, rushing yards, sacks, tackles, whatever it is, so much more. Pick Six is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia. DraftKings makes it even sweeter for those first-time users out there. New Pick Six customers, you play $5 on a set, you get 50 in Pick Six credits. I'm excited to watch the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders here this upcoming weekend. Saquon Barkley is obviously the big story. Can he do enough to win this game? Jalen Hurts is a big story, too. If you think of the big Jalen Hurts game, if he is going to hold up his end of the bargain, man, look at the passing yard totals, the passing touchdown totals, or if you think that Washington's going to be able to limit him a little bit, like it feels like that's been the case over the last 3 weeks, check out those numbers. See if those make sense for you, and check out all the other matchups as well. Win more cash on Pick Six. Download the DraftKings Pick Six app now. Use the promo code PFF. That's promo code PFF. For new customers to get play $5 and get 50 in Pick Six credits. Only on DraftKings Pick Six. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions do vary by jurisdiction. Pick Six not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonuses awarded as non-withdrawable Pick Six credits that expire within 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at picksix.draftkings.com/promos. I think that's everybody on my 10 through 6.
Yeah, we went through all mine too, except Gunnar Helm, who I know you have higher. And I had Helm at 6. So 5 for me is Benjamin Yurosek from Georgia.
Interesting. Did you watch him?
I didn't watch him, but I've watched. Is it Yurosek or Yurosek?
It's Yurosek. I thought it was Yurosek, but it's Yurosek.
I've watched Yurosek, I feel like 3 different times. I will watch him again, and I know he wasn't used very often in their pass game, but I do know the young fella has significantly stepped his game up as a blocker.
Look, man, he was the guy who I was talking about at the top of the show, where he played a lot more when he was at Stanford because he was at Stanford before he was at Georgia.
He was like the dude at Stanford once upon a time with Tanner McKee.
Yes. Yeah, I believe so. And he transfers to Georgia. And even though he took a step back in playing time, I actually wonder if it was best for him because Georgia can develop some all-around tight ends. We know
they know
we've seen that before. This group had Lawson Lucky in it. It had Benjamin Yurosek. It had Oscar Delp. I mean, it's a deep tight end room at Georgia. So the snap count was down a little bit lower, but Yurosek, 6'4", 243 pounds. And look, he's going to be more of a receiving tight end just because of his build, around 6'4", 240. But pound for pound, this dude can block. And Georgia used him as a fullback lead blocker in short yardage and goal line situations. They used him attached to the line of scrimmage so that Lawson Lucky could play as more of a receiver on the outside. They would use him attached to the line of scrimmage at the tight end 1 so Oscar Delp could be more of the wing back. But Yurosek also played in the slot. I think he's quick. I think he's a really natural all-around athlete. He reminds me of how we talked about Ben Sinnott last year from Kansas State. Just this jack of all trades type of a player who you like the blocking potential. You like what he could be as a receiver. Not a ton of work as a receiver when he was at Georgia, but I think he's got a really nice first step out of his stance. I think he's got some pretty decent flexibility and wiggle to him to give you some good nuance in his routes. 62nd percentile when it comes to separation yielded against single coverage. He's got pretty good scores when it comes to average depth of target. 63rd percentile, yards after catch, 55th. And the positively graded run blocking plays, Connor, 11.6%. That's 79th percentile.
That's impressive for him.
This dude's 243, and he's yielding way better blocking percentiles than most of the guys we just talked about on the show who are listed above 250. So he's got really great blocking fundamentals, approaches the game the right way, and he feels like a jack of all trades type of a player for you. I am a sucker for Yurosek. I think within this tight end group, he's going to be my guy. He's going to be the guy I bet on. He's going to be the guy that I just want on my football team. Played tight end and outside linebacker when he was high school. Won a state championship playing both sides of the ball. He also played basketball, averaged a double-double as a senior and a junior when he was in high school there, winning a state championship again in that sport. So big fan, just a big fan. He's another guy who deep family background, Dad played football at Colorado State. Mom played volleyball at Colorado State. We've mentioned this before. We mentioned this on Summer Scouting. Great grandfather Mike, credited with inventing the baby carrot.
One of our favorites.
Where that comes from.
That is years ago we did that bit.
2 years ago when you brought that up. Yes.
Insanity. Insanity how long it's been.
He's
a Jalen Catalon of Summer Scouting prospects.
Dude,
he is.
Guess who we're talking about 6 months from now?
Jalen Catalon, baby.
You better fucking believe it.
I'll never quit.
Everybody does summer scouting for 6 years. Yeah, they're called doctors.
I'll never log off. Jalen Catalon is going to own a law firm by the time he is done with college. A surgeon.
Sure hope he does, man.
A surgeon.
I sure hope he does. My bottom line scouting report for Yurosek. He didn't see heavy usage in 2024, but he presents adequate all-around NFL ability for the position. Though he is best used as a move tight end, especially if he can put on maybe 5 to 10 more pounds. Dude, if you give me Benjamin Yurosek and tell me he's gaining 5 to 10 more good pounds at the NFL level,
yeah,
I'm in, baby. I am in. He can make for a versatile tight end too in basically any offense as a mid-round pick, potentially a late day 2 selection. I'm in.
So number 5 for you, right?
Number 5 for me.
Nice. All right. He will be a Shrine Bowl player. Big opportunity for him to get more pass catching looks. All right. So should I read 5 through 1?
It's not like
Well, I already read Elijah Arroyo at 5 and Mason Taylor at 4, so I think everybody knows my top 3.
Okay, then let's do Gunnar Helm, because I have Gunnar Helm at 4, and then that will lead us to our top 3s.
So you have Helm at 4, I have Helm at 6. I mean, you like him a little more, so I'll be brief before tossing to you. Well, what a year for Gunnar Helm. First of all, the name, right? Well, Gunnar Helm is like, if you could create a tight end, you'd name him Gunnar Helm.
What a sick tight end.
And it's Gunnar, Gunnar. It's so sick. 6'5" and an eighth, 252, senior out of Texas. I mean, breakout season. To put in perspective,
totally.
2023 had 14 catches for 192 yards and 2 touchdowns. This year he had 60 catches for 786 yards and 7 touchdowns. He only dropped 2 of his 73 targets. This guy plucks the ball out of the air pretty seamlessly. 35 of his 60 catches went for first downs this year. I love him running after the catch, Trevor. Jukes,
one of the best.
Stiff arms, hurdles. The big frame eats contact. Texas put a lot on this guy's plate as a blocker. They really did. And it's not always pretty in terms of sustaining blocks and getting overpowered, but he has experience with it. And he's got size, and he obviously has really high effort. And he didn't play a lot before this year, where there is room to grow there.
I think that he's obviously going to make his bread and butter as a receiver.
Sure.
But he did give a little something in
he's
blocking.
He's not a zero. Like
no, he's not a zero, but most of his best work is going to come after the catch. It really is. It's going to come as a receiver. This is so, and that means a lot to me. You mentioned the creativity and the dynamic ability that this guy had when he was running after the catch. That's what draws me to him, and that's why I have him number 4. There's a quote from Steve Sarkisian, his head coach from this year. It says, quote, "I've been really proud of Gunnar. Gunnar continued to work at it, and I think the dedication that he made to himself and developing himself in the past game, we saw glimpses of it last year, but what he's been able to do this year, he's become a real weapon for us. A guy that can not only catch the ball, but also create explosive plays and make people miss in the open field." That, to me, is a standout trait amongst this tight end group, because although there's a lot of future NFL players that we have talked about here on this show, there aren't a ton of standout future NFL players. And like we talked about with Arroyo, and why Gunnar is a little bit higher than Arroyo on my list, is just because he has showcased a little bit more of that dynamic ability when it comes to what he could do after the catch. He's also been somebody who I know coaches are going to love, because he stuck around at Texas. You know, he's a former 3-star tight end. He commits to Texas under Tom Herman. They fire Todd Herman, and Gunnar Helm has actually talked about this. He's like, dude, when Tom Herman got fired, he's like, Texas was a wreck. I mean, our culture, he basically says, like, I'm paraphrasing all this, but he's like, our culture sucked.
Right.
Like our grade point average as a team, he mentioned was like 2.3 or something like that, like two flat or a 2.3. He's like, you had guys quitting. They'd show up late to meetings. They didn't care. Sarkisian, year 1, he starts to turn things around. He starts to get the right guys in the building. Year 2, year 3. And Gunnar has been a part of that core that has changed the culture in Texas and bought in to be a future pro and do what you need to do. Yeah, absolutely did. And so I think NFL teams are going to appreciate that a lot from him as well. How about this one? 73.9% separation percentage against single coverage. That's 91st percentile. This dude knows how to set you up, how to run a route. And as a tight end, no, he's not going to be a blazer. But when you get to that break point, as you'll often see with tight ends, there's those subtle ways that with physicality, you create that throwing window, you create that separation, and he's able to do it so well. And then obviously we've able to see what he could do after the catch. So the strengths and weaknesses from him, first of all, good core and grip strength, the wall off defensive lineman. Now he's not a big people mover in the run game, but at least he can wall you off. He's got that good grip strength, that good core strength, balanced receiver after the catch, decent sink to his hips for those change of directions, a good route running nuance potential, good wiggle as a playmaker with yards after catch, good hands to clear and create that separation from the break point, like I was mentioning. Some weaknesses, struggles against more powerful edge rushers. Like you said, he's not going to really make his money as a full-time inline blocker. Lacks that true punch at contact. Even though he can wall guys off, he lacks that true punch there. Sometimes the hands are a little bit wide when it comes to his fundamentals as well. But it's that yards after catch ability that makes him a tight end 2 type of a player at the NFL level. So a hell of a year from Gunnar Helm. And I got him at number 4 right now.
Yeah, big fans of him for sure. All right, so the top 3, which is, I guess, not a surprise in many degrees. I'll say this. I think 3's more wide open than I initially expected.
3 is way closer to 4 and 5 than it is 2 and 1.
Harold Fannin Jr.?
Correct. Yeah.
And then 2 and 1 for me. 2 was Colston, Loveland, Tyler Warren was number 1. I think both guys go in the first round.
We have the same, and we'll sort of dig into exactly what goes into that, but we do have the same order here. So Harold Fannin Jr., very excited to hear what you think of this player, because what a unique prospect he is.
He is, man. He is a receiving machine. I have him 6'3", 231. Are we in the same...
Yeah, I mean, he's
ballpark?
listed 6'4", 230, so I don't have any official measurements on him. It would not shock me if he is 6'3".
I had his spring measurement at 6'3", 231.
I don't think he grew.
Right, so let's call it 6'3". The weight, I think this is a guy that will come into the combine. If I was Harold Fannin, if I can go inside the mind of a Harold Fannin Jr., I would show up at the combine.
Jennings.
It's the timeless video. I think about it at least still once every 2 months.
Anytime somebody says, let's go into the mind of, I always just think
every time.
Greg Jennings.
Every time. When that video came out, I was a freshman in college, and we sat in the dorm room watching it on repeat, I think, for 4 hours straight. So I would try to come into the combine at like 244 if I was Fannin Jr. I would not run. I'd work out, but I wouldn't run. And then I think I would drop a little weight and run at my pro day. Let's get into it, though, what we see on tape before we get into all that stuff. This is somebody who, to be fair, 2023, he had a big year. He caught 44 passes, 623 yards, 6 touchdowns. Then this year, he goes college record-setting nuclear with 100 catches for 1,342 yards, 64 first downs, 9 touchdowns.
Very casual.
It's the Trey McBride, Colorado State. He is the offense at tight end, and you just don't see that very often. Now, this is somebody who's used all over the place the last 2 seasons. 56 snaps in the backfield, 526 in line, 321 in the slot, and 180 at real outside wide receiver. I mean, that legitimately, outside wide receiver, almost 200 snaps. 2024, some numbers that stuck out to me, Trevor, besides just the raw stats. 10 of 17 contested catch opportunities he hauled in. 32 catches of 15 plus yards. he's got big strides for build-up speed. Like his strides eat a lot of turf, and he really builds up speed rather than generates short area explosiveness. He knows how to sell routes with really exaggerated steps, head fakes. I love him as an adjuster in the air. When the ball's in the air, no adjustment is ruled out for Harold Fannin Jr. He could find a way to kind of twist his body, use his base, time his leaps, use his catch radius. Some of the questions I have for him, once again, the short area explosiveness to me for a guy at 230-ish, maybe heavier, I don't really think it's impressive. I don't think he's short area explosive. I thought it was pretty mediocre. He wasn't somebody where I was like, wow, look at him. Elijah Arroyo to me stood out as a short area mover more than Harold Fannin Jr.
So I think Harold Fannin Jr. is, I think he lacks flexibility. I think there's a lot of stiffness there. So
in his routes,
I would still say he's explosive, but for him to change direction, it takes multiple steps for him to stop and then turn. So it's not he's not a super agile dude.
Straight line, he can build up speed. He can he can explode off the snap straight line. But you're right. The lateral agility is a little underwhelming for the numbers he has. At his size, you're just not going to play on the line of scrimmage at the NFL. You're not. There's not really much to say unless he transforms his body type. And does that change who he is as this dynamic receiving weapon? I found him to be more of a move blocker or slot blocker than an inline presence.
But he can also block his ass off.
No, he can, but I don't see him lining up next to a tackle and taking
not
on
at 6'3". Yeah.
No, it's the weight. That's the thing.
What, 6'3".
It was kind of the same combo with Isaiah Likely once upon a time.
So that's literally my comp for him. Because I don't know what else to do with him.
Same. But Isaiah Likely, everybody looked at him and was like, he's this receiving weapon dynamic. But he blocked his ass off too when given the chance. It's just not all blocking is created equal. Not every tight end is going to sit on the line of scrimmage and combo block a D end or be able to take on a blitzing linebacker. But if you play on the slot and you can erase DBs, or you can block on it as a move blocker coming across the formation, that's still helpful. So Fannin is a very unique player. He's not going to be for everyone, but he's still a very impressive prospect in the right offense.
So just a little bit of background information on him, because I think it's fun when people can learn a little bit about this. Fannin Jr., former 0-star recruit from Canton, Ohio, played both safety and linebacker in high school and was the team's kick returner and punt returner too, which sort of goes into his dynamic after the catch ability. Also played varsity basketball when he was in high school. Bowling Green was the only offer that he had out of high school due to his grades. He fell behind on schoolwork during the 2020 COVID pandemic. So it was kind of the school year was sort of all over the place, and he sort of fell behind on schoolwork there. Colleges weren't even sure if he would be academically eligible to qualify to play college ball, but Bowling Green stuck with him. Once he arrived on campus, he actually switched tight end, which was a position that he had not played in high school. But his coaches rave about him. I was reading an article that his coaches, from one of the very first practices, they were like, this guy could be a future NFL player. And I get it.
They were right.
I get it. Just, looking at who he is, he's a very unique player, and he's not going to be for every. He's almost Deebo Samuel-ish. If he were to lose 15 pounds, he would almost be more of a Deebo Samuel with how he's built and how he'd win. But Deebo again is much more flexible and agile than Harold Fannin is. Now, maybe if Fannin lost weight, he'd become more agile, and maybe that's what he needs to do. Maybe go from 230 and play more around 220, 215 and become just more of a gadget player, perhaps.
An H-back almost?
Yeah, almost something like that. But I wonder if that's the best path for him, because, again, I don't really know what to do with this player. He's a highly productive football player. I think he's strong as an ox for his size. I think he's got really good explosiveness for his size. Obviously, all sorts of versatility and usage, heavily productive player. But the traits that I also really want to see from receiving tight ends is fluidity. And he doesn't have fluidity. And I think that his footwork is kind of a mess off the line of scrimmage. I think that sometimes he can run with his toes like pointed outwards. And so like, it's almost like he's
interesting.
He's not like, he doesn't like have as much balance, or he's not covering as much ground as he possibly could. So that might just be like a flexibility thing, like how he's built, like his lower body, but he's just a very unique football player. And it's hard to find what to do with him. And it's hard to place him in this class. So if I have more of a streamlined idea of what a Gunnar Helm or what an Elijah Arroyo could do at the NFL level, maybe I would bump them over Harold Fannin Jr., but he's just, because he's going to the Senior Bowl too, Fannin Jr. is, right? So we'll get to see him there. And I think that's going to be a really exciting and important part of that week is what kind of a difference maker do we have here? Does he look like a legitimate tight end? Is he too small to play the position? Do we think he's got all sorts of versatility? What are his movement skills like outside of just being the emphasis? He's 100th percentile in yards per route run. It was stupid. It was like 3.34. Doesn't make any sense. Just nuts how much they force-fed this guy the ball. But
I mean, if he's running a route, there's a good chance he was getting the ball. He's
getting the football. Right. Yeah. But the percentile scores are high, like 62nd percentile against single coverage, 93rd percentile in yards after the catch. He had a 0.82 wins above replacement average. The only player who had high, that was higher than two of Brock Bowers' seasons.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know, man.
It's a really tough one.
It's just a really tough one. I would love to hear from the addicts who are listening to this episode. What do you think about Harold Fannin Jr.? Are you all in on this guy, or do you have your reservations about some of the flexibility, some of the limited route running, the limited change of direction? Are you worried about that? Can you play him in line a lot? Do you have to play him on the outside? Would you play him as more of a gadget player, like an H-back type of a guy? I'd love to hear from people.
I'll tell you right now how I see his fit. I see his fit identical to what Mike McDaniel did with Jonnu Smith this year.
I think it's a good call out.
Jonnu Smith, for those that don't live in the insane fantasy world that I am often in, had 88 catches for 884 yards and 8 touchdowns this year.
Yeah.
Like, McDaniel found ways to get him working in space.
Yeah.
As a 6'3", 245-pound tight end.
I think that's a really good call out. That's going to be the usage for him. I mean, I draft Harold Fannin Jr. in the 3rd round just because I think he's too good of an athlete, too good of a football player. But the question is, how much higher are you drafting a Harold Fannin Jr.?
You better have a plan. You better you better not think like I just took the 3rd tight end on our board. No, like I know exactly the plays I want to use this guy for.
Yep.
AKA, don't do what the Jets did with Malachi Corley last year. Moving on.
That was tough.
It was needed. It was needed.
All right, before we break down the top 2 tight ends in this class who we think could be first-round caliber type of guys, got a question for the people. What does your child's success look like to you? Maybe it's a job they're passionate about, maybe travel in the world, or just being happy and comfortable. Whatever their journey is, you can help make it easier for them to achieve with the Kids Investment Account for Fabric by Gerber Life. By making a contribution to your child's future today, you can give them the means to pursue their dreams, both big and small. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it happen. Easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With the Kids Investment Account for Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Kids can't invest while they're minors, but Kids Investment Account allows you to invest on their behalf, gives their investments more time to grow. The funds can be used on anything. While they're a kid, it's after school activities, it's tutors, it's music lessons, it's summer camps, whatever. And then when they're young adults, a new car, first house, starting a business, going on trips, whatever it is. Whole thing's online, very easy to set up. Could take you just 5 minutes, and then you can manage your child's account and monitor those investments right from your phone. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child's future today at meetfabric.com/stock exchange. That is meetfabric.com/stock exchange, MEET, fabric.com/stock exchange. Portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. Colston Loveland, who I believe both of us had as tight end one going into the season.
That'd be correct, partner.
Now we have him as tight end 2. So he's a tight end from Michigan, true junior. He was not draft eligible last year. Felt like he could have left after Michigan's national championship winning season and been drafted very highly as well, but not quite draft eligible yet. Plays as a junior this year. Went through some injuries, had a shoulder injury and then an undisclosed injury. I couldn't find what the other one was, but ended up missing 3 games this year. Michigan's passing attack just took a major step back in total production. So you don't want to look too much at the production numbers, but the receiving grades, the percentiles, how he performed when he was out there and healthy. Still a very, very good football player. But what'd you think of Colston Loveland?
Lots of like here, man. I mean, follows up a good 2023 with 56 catches in 2024, 582 yards, 5 touchdowns. This is a former Gatorade Football Player of the Year in Idaho. He was one of those guys that he played tight end in high school. A lot of top tight ends in college grow into tight end, as we've talked about. I mean, we're going to talk about Tyler Warren here in a second. Like, he played quarterback in high school in a lot of different positions. When you go through this exercise, these guys, they play everywhere. But Colston Loveland is a tight end true and through. And I think that comes with a lot of positives because there are nuances in his game that a lot of these guys just don't have, Trevor. That's the thing with Loveland. I mean, he plays obviously both on the line of scrimmage and in the slot. He's got reps where he can win outside like a true mismatch wide receiver. He knows how to sell his routes. You see the head fakes, the shoulder fakes. He really understands how to win leverage both ways. Like, I need to get leverage inside. I know how to do that. I know how to win leverage outside. He knows
he's a smart blocker.
Yes.
I think
he's just a smart player.
Yeah. He's 245. So like, he can be blowing anybody off the ball, but
man, it's
a little bit like what we talked about from Brock Bowers, where it's like pound for pound.
Yeah.
You're still all right with this.
Completely. Really good adjustments to secure passes. I mean, 2 drops on 82 targets this year. And if you watched Michigan's quarterback play, you would understand what this guy was dealing with. He is also, this is what will really help him at the next level, I think, be a difference-making tight end. He's phenomenal at improvising his routes to work with a scrambling quarterback. When the play breaks down and the quarterback is on the move and it becomes backyard ball, I think Colston Loveland is a plus. He has athleticism to be a blocker off of motion or just on the move in general. He's only going to be, he turns 21 the month of the draft, I think. So he's 21 his entire rookie season. So there is so much to like about this guy. I mean, he's on the ground more than I'd like as a blocker. I think he could arrive with a little more force at times as a blocker. But like you said, like it got better this year, I thought. Colston Loveland, he's a pretty clean prospect overall.
Yeah, as long as you're not looking for him to be something he's not, there's a ton to like. If you want him to be a beast in the blocking game when it comes to just moving people off the ball in run blocking situations, it's going to leave a lot to be desired. But again, this is sort of why I separate move tight ends and receiving tight ends versus guys who are more in line, because I want those strengths to be able to shine. There's no reason why I should match up Colston Loveland with Jackson Hawes, because they're literally not the same player. They technically play the same position, but they're going to be used completely differently. So when you look at Colston Loveland, you really just have to look at who he is as a receiver. So 6'5", 245 pounds. You love the size there overall, but dude, so much to love about how he is a receiver. Very impressive athlete, even for a lighter tight end. Long arms, big catch radius, natural pass catcher, crispy routes with good juice in and out of his breaks, change of direction, flexibility to run all different sorts of routes. You mentioned he's a great improvising option as a receiver for a quarterback because he has that ability to stop and start immediately. Like a lot of other tight ends do not have that ability to do. So when you look at some of the scores, 96th percentile separation percentile overall, 82nd separation percentile when it comes to going up against single coverage situations. The yards per route run was very high, 33rd percentile in average depth of target at 8.2, 40th percentile in yards after catch at 5.2. So could he be a little bit more dynamic after the catch? Yeah, I think so. But I see enough movement skills within his routes and how he runs without the ball to know, well, I can absolutely get more playmaking ability. I think it's just a mentality thing. I think it's just a coach getting with him being like, hey, man, you catch the football and I see that you run upfield very quickly. hit him with a little hezzy, put your foot in the ground, make a
right.
miss. Let's get the worst missed tackles up there. He has the movement skills to be able to do it. So a very similar, I think, way that we talked about Brock Bowers, we talk about Colston Loveland. Now, I think Bowers was obviously a more productive pro. I think Bowers is a little bit more stronger. I think that Bowers has a little bit better blocking abilities, but it is that same archetype. And where Bowers was sort of this like top 10 overall projection type of a talent, I think Colston Loveland is that, I gave him a late first, early second round grade as a tight end. So something right around, anywhere from pick 20 to pick 40, I think makes a lot of sense for Colston Loveland and where you're going to end up selecting him. So to me, I feel like this is a dude who, there were parts of his tapes this year where I was like, man, it's leaving a lot to be desired here from him. But as sort of time went on and I watched more games, it recalibrated to sort of what we saw from 2023, where it's like, all right, this guy's obviously somebody who's going to be a big time weapon. It's just a matter of where he's going to be picked in the NFL draft. So that's what I thought of Loveland.
Yeah, I mean, and what we see, his stock really didn't change this year. I mean, he's just a really, I guess to be fair, there was little things he improved on, but overall, he's just one of those guys where it was good. Like he went to the year as a first rounder and he leaves the year as a first rounder.
Yep.
So good year from Colston Loveland. But number one,
he doesn't leave his tight end one.
He doesn't leave his tight end one because number one just went nuclear in terms of player development. And I had Tyler Warren as tight end 4 from summer, but like he totally evolved into a different player.
Yeah. Hey, look. Kudos to you because you were way higher on him than I was at summer scouting. I remember you pointing him out and being like,
I just said he needs to catch the ball. That was a huge problem.
So summer scouting was, hold on. I think I had so I had him tight end 6 in summer scouting. Right, and I sort of, but like, there were a lot of those guys that were in the, like Mitchell Evans, Terrance Ferguson, Luke Lachey. Like I had him, Benjamin Yurosek. Like I had him in that group of those guys. And I think you probably did too, but you had him at the top. Like you had him at like, okay, of the guys within that next group who I could see separating themselves, you had Tyler Warren there. Not to say that you totally predicted what was going to happen this year, but
of course I did.
Just, hey, right. Of course you did. Kudos to you for being on top of it, man. And noticing that from him. And he was so much fun to watch this year. I mean, one, he brings you all around tight end athletic ability, 6'6", 255 pounds. He could block his ass off for you, but he's also a great receiver. He's fantastic after the catch. Really strong at the catch point. He's got the long arms to him. He's got the frame to be able to play in line. He's got so much experience in Penn State's offense playing in line, but they'll also line him up at fullback. They'll line him up as a wing back. You mentioned that he was a former high school quarterback. He was starting quarterback for their football team. He also was a 2-sport athlete in basketball and baseball too. So this was just you know what's hilarious? So as if this guy's game wasn't blue collar enough, his hometown's Mechanicsville, Virginia. I mean, it couldn't be more perfect. The way that this guy plays is just as blue collar throwback tight end as it gets, and he's from Mechanicsville, Virginia.
All-state baseball player.
It's true.
I mean, this is a
dingers. You just know it.
Oh my God. Massive human. I interviewed him at Big Ten Media Day. That was about.
Could he host the pod?
He could own the podcast if he wanted to. He's just a massive, massive human. Special athlete, man. It was cool to see. And I think we talked a little bit about the family history, right? Just his dad played at Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
Grandfather played at Wake. Sister played softball at East Tennessee.
Yeah, super athletic family.
It's wild. It's just the way they used him this year was out of this world. I mean, the snap counts are hilarious, right?
Move center, receiving center.
The craziest play I think I watched this year, where
the USC game is just they're throwing shit at the wall, and it's all making it stick. Yeah,
they're blindfold hitting bullseyes over and over again, and it's like, well, how did they just do that?
Yeah.
69 snaps in the backfield this year, 407 in line, 281 in the slot, 91 out wide. He's just a Mack truck going down the seam. Like, he just blows by linebackers and just out muscles DBs over the top. If you want to own the middle of the field, you're going to draft Tyler Warren. That was my big takeaway. Yep. He caught 26 first downs in the 0 to 19 yard range in the middle of the field. Like, that's anything in that short and intermediate area was a first down for him. 13 to 21 on contested catches. He forced 19 missed tackles in the open field. Lowers it. He wants to punish defenders. The wildcat runs. I think this guy is the next great tush push weapon in the NFL. I really think so. Like, obviously, Jalen, Josh Allen, Tyler Warren. I think if you're one of those teams, you're like, man, you know what we're missing? A tush push weapon.
I could see it.
I think he's going to be elite. And I think when teams just sell out every defender to it, I think he's going to sneak one by them and throw the ball. Because he can. He threw a touchdown this year. He can throw. So, and let's not forget the blocking is just, I loved watching this guy block. It's not always perfect, but man, when he gets, he had a block against Illinois at the goal line where he sent somebody to Mars on a touchdown run. Like, this is one of the dudes of this draft class, man. If I would be ecstatic to walk out of this draft class with Tyler Warren.
100%. He won the Mackey Award this year as the nation's top tight end, had 104 receptions, over 1,200 yards. Threat percentage went up from 16.1 last year to 30.2 this year, which is nuts. Believe he has the highest wins above average score for a tight end ever in a single season at 0.88. That's nuts. He is such a complete, fantastic football player who you mentioned is just a dude. I mean, he is one of the football players in this class that you want to come away with, that the NFL is going to love, and that the NFL is not going to let get out of the top 15 in this draft class. I mean, Indianapolis at 14 is the floor for Tyler Warren. It feels like.
I don't know if there's weak there anymore. He's that good.
Right, I could be with you, man. Weaknesses that I saw. So you're really mentioning he's not perfect. He's a bit stiffer to change direction. So the route tree is not going to be, it's not going to be a full 100% route tree from him. He is a little bit stiffer to change direction. Top speed does take a couple of steps to get up to. He's not the most explosive, but the top speed is great. And I think it is certainly very adequate explosiveness for the NFL level. He's got good strength as a run blocker. You mentioned some of the big time impact blocks that he has. There are times when I wish he'd latch on and he'd keep and maintain those blocks a little bit longer, though. So there are some reps where I wish he'd be a little bit more reliable there, but you can absolutely teach that. And then the other thing is, I felt like he could stand to tempo his routes a little bit more against zone coverage. And again, these are all very little things. He brings so much to the table, but these are also all coachable, teachable, repetition type of things that are the difference between him being like, okay, well, yeah, he's clearly a starting tight end at the NFL level, to being in the same conversation as George Kittle and Trey McBride and Brock Bowers from this year at the very top of the tight end room when it comes to the NFL. So to me, I think that Tyler Warren brings you absolutely everything that you would want. I think Brock Bowers had a little bit higher of a floor of a player. That's why I agree. Talked about higher. There are those things that I think that Warren can sort of get better at, that Brock Bowers was already better at when he was making the jump to the NFL. But this is a starting caliber tight end, somebody that could absolutely be a tight end one type of a player, and a guy who is worthy of a first round selection from the position.
Yeah, I think Brock was a better adjuster to the ball, more natural. Yeah,
but I think Brock just had a little bit more flexibility to him. Now he's a little bit lighter, but he did. He did.
But yeah, Warren he's a throwback player in a league that's kind of gravitating towards some throwback things.
Yep.
I mean, everybody just loves playing heavy and being able to run the ball. He's going to make an offense a lot better for 3 downs and allow you to be multiple and allow you to play a lot of different ways. And I'm really fascinated to see how high a team ultimately ends up valuing him, especially when everybody kind of looks at it and go, why wouldn't the Colts take him? We might have to get ahead of them.
I think you would. I think you're going to have to get ahead of him, because I think he is fully in the scopes of the Indianapolis Colts. All right, I'll go 15. I know we did 10, but I'll do 15 just because I got him ranked here. My 15-1, Ronnie Gadsden from Syracuse, number 15, Luke Lachey from Iowa at 14, Jalen Conyers from Texas Tech is at 13. Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech's at 12. Jake Briningstool from Clemson at 11. Caden Prieskorn from Ole Miss at 10. Mason Taylor from LSU at 9. Terrance Ferguson from Oregon at 8. Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame at 7. Elijah Arroyo from Miami at 6. Benjamin Yurosek from Stanford. Sorry, it was at Stanford. Georgia at number 5. Gunnar Helm from Texas at 4. Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green at 3. Colston Loveland from Michigan at number 2. And then number 1 at Tyler Warren. Connor, who was your top 10?
10 for me was Luke Lachey from Iowa. 9 was Jake Briningstool from Clemson. 8 for me was Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame. 7 for me was Terrance Ferguson from Oregon. 6 was Gunnar Helm from Texas. 5 was Elijah Arroyo from Miami. 4 was Mason Taylor from LSU. Same top 3 as you. Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green at 3. Colston Loveland from Michigan at 2. Tyler Warren from Penn State at numero uno.
We would love to hear from you. Let us know your thoughts on this tight end class. It's a lot of pick your flavor. We said at the very top of the show. So who is your flavor of tight end in this class? Who's a guy who you go, all right, maybe outside of the top couple of guys, this is my guy. Stamp the my guy approval here. Would love to see that in the comments. The guys that you're going to ride for, even if it's tight end 2, it's somebody you go, man, they're going to be a tight end 2, but I think they could be a tight end 1. Or at the very least, a big-time contributor to a future NFL team. Best way to do that, youtube.com/@NFL Stock Exchange. If you're audio only, at Tampa Bay Trey, at Connor J. Rogers. That's how you can hit us up on Instagram and Twitter. Connor, you got anything else before we get out of here?
No, that sums it up. We're going to stay busy on the feed. I know we have a lot of travel ahead too, but we're not going anywhere.
So coming up next here on this channel, we've got an interview coming up with Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Senior Bowl, and we're going to be able to preview the Senior Bowl with him. So we'll give you guys that interview as our second episode that we have for this week. I am going to be at the Shrine Bowl. So here on this channel, I'm going to be giving you guys a lot of shorter updates. We're not going to have, because Connor and I won't be there, and you know, traveling to and from All-Star events is a little bit difficult. So we're not going to have a specific or multiple episodes that we have Shrine and Senior Bowl week. What we're going to do is, after all these practices, I'm going to try to give you all sorts of YouTube shorts with practice clips, with updates, who is standing out, these guys that are being major difference makers, first at the Shrine Bowl, and then we will do the same thing for the Senior Bowl. And then, of course, the end of the week, we got that ever coveted, highly anticipated, can't miss it, multiple round post Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl mock draft. So that will be coming next week after these events are over. But just wanted to give you guys a heads up of how we are covering those events. Keep your eyes peeled for a lot of content that's coming on the YouTube Shorts side of the feed. We're going to try to build that out and try to continue to build the following and give you guys some good content that way. So that's the plan. There we go. Connor, anything else?
We will be together quite shortly.
Let's go. I'm excited. In-person pods, in-person content.
Blast.
It's going to be
running around the Senior Bowl. You talked to Latu for 4 hours last year. We'll see who your new best friend is this year.
Me and him are pals.
It was a great shot.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see who I'm going to be pals with this year. I don't know.
Stay tuned, everyone.
Chipotle on the sideline. So, all right, everybody. Appreciate everybody watching and listening to the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. For Connor Rogers, I'm Trevor Sikkema. We'll see you guys next time.